Well, when the Odyssey was approaching, you guys remember about a month or so ago, the box office projections for it was around 80, $85 million, which was great because that would have put it right in line with where Oppenheimer came in on its opening weekend. I think Oppenheimer, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it made like $82 million on its opening weekend. And then, like Christian just pointed out, it went on to make nearly $1 billion and won Best Picture at the Academy Awards for, shits and giggles. Well, they were projecting that the Odyssey could itself come in around that $80 million mark. Then it got adjusted up. Then they were saying, well, it could be $80 to $100 million, which would make it the biggest launch of any Christopher Nolan film that wasn't called Batman or didn't have Batman in it, even though this one has Robert Pattinson, but that's neither here nor there. Then they said, oh, this thing could go over $100 million. Well, now it's out. The official accounting right now is saying that the Odyssey made $124.5 million. Some outlets are reporting that's going to be adjusted up to 126. Either way, we're looking at about $120 million opening weekend. And the reason that is so significant is because that number represents a number of box office records that it sets. 6 specifically that we're going to talk about here. First of all, the records that set with 124.5 million, again, could be adjusted up to 126. First, and we talked about this the other day, it was the biggest preview screenings of 2026. The Odyssey made $17.6 million on its preview night, which beat the previous record holder, which was Toy Story 5 at 17.5. It is also the biggest R-rated opening of 2026. The previous biggest R-rated opening of this year was Backrooms with 81.4 million, Odyssey obviously with 124.5. It also becomes the biggest R-rated opening in Universal Studios history, beating out 50 Shades of Grey, which had 85.1. And by the way, I also want to mention this. At 124.5 million, it is the biggest R-rated opening of all time of any movie that doesn't have the word Deadpool in it.
I was just looking at that.
Yeah, only comic book films, specifically the 3 Deadpool films. The 3 Deadpool films are the largest R-rated openings ever. But other than movies with the word Deadpool in it, you're talking about the Odyssey is now the biggest opening of any non-comic book film, R-rated film in the history of cinema. Also, first R-rated Universal film to open to above $100 million. It is the best opening weekend in history for a sword and sandal epic. Yes, that includes the Lord of the Rings films, which beat out 300 that had a $70.8 million opening, and the biggest opening ever for a Matt Damon film. The previous best was his Bourne Ultimatum at $69 million. Now, he was a supporting character in Oppenheimer, so that one doesn't really count. So several numbers here. Again, to me, the biggest one is the one that doesn't even come up on the score sheet, which is the highest opening for an R-rated film ever other than a comic book film. I think that's significant. I also think, Christian, that it's really significant that this thing has blown, like those initial projections, that was just about a month and a half ago. It's beaten those numbers by over 50%, coming in at 127. Now, look, this movie has to make a lot of money to break even.
Right.
It does, right? Like, it's about a $250 million budget. If everything else was normal, you're looking at a movie that needs to make in the 600 million plus range to break even. But then you got to add on top of that the Nolan tax.
Right.
Christopher Nolan and his partner are getting 20%, not of the net. They're getting 20% gross of this movie, which really pushes the break-even point up to north of $800 million. And this is an R-rated film. Only 2 R-rated films in history have ever made over $1 billion. So I think the reason, and I'd love to know your thought on this, Christian. I think the reason that the studio looked at that and said, you know what, we're still comfortable doing it, is because they look at this as Christopher Nolan's masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to look at this the way they look at Inception, the way they look at Oppenheimer. They believe this is a movie that is going to become, join the pantheon catalog of the great Hollywood films. and whether they're right or wrong. And they believe this is going to be a movie that generates money for them for decades to come. There's a prestige, winning Academy Awards, but I think they see this as a moneymaker for them for decades to come. But anyway, you saw these numbers. Did you expect it to make over that 80 million initially? Are you surprised, not surprised at the 125 million line? Where do you put this in historical perspective right now?
No, I'm not surprised. I say when we were doing the predictions, when they were calculating between 85 to 100, I think my prediction on my show was like 110 to 115. So it even overshot what I had said. I don't remember what the hell I said, but something along those lines, because of what we just talked about and the fact that it is an event and it is hard to get people to get excited about going to the movies. And in order to do that, Nolan gets people in the seats. He's more so the movie star. And we used to have this conversation, John, back in the day on other shows where it would be the movie star themselves in the way that it was a Tom Cruise or a Will Smith back in the day. And nobody really knew, well, the new Julia Roberts movie's coming out. What's she in? Who gives a shit? I'm just going to go see it. That doesn't happen anymore with actors. It happens with Nolan. Yes, obviously, Odyssey was something that the swords and sandals idea of it in this big action epic thing. That's what people wanted to go and check out. And he gets people excited to go to the movies again. And so I think that as far as what you were just talking about with Universal, I think it's a little bit of the one battle after another thing where now I don't think that this movie is going to lose money, but in the idea that one battle after another, the studio knew they were not going to make money box office wise with that movie. It cost $170 million, but the investment paid off with all the acclaim and the prestige and everything that came from it. And they had a big enough year with all the other movies that they had with Sinners and everything else too, and Weapons, that they had enough money in the bank to say worth the risk. Now they haven't had those many wins this year. Universal hasn't had so many wins, I guess, this year, right? I guess what they did? They had Mario, right? So Mario was was already a win that they had. So this one can go ahead and make. And then doesn't, and shoot, man, no, what am I talking about? Even Obsession was Universal as well, too.
That's right. They did distribute that, didn't they?
Yeah, they distributed that as well, too. So they have, they're doing okay that way. So they can make it back a little bit if it doesn't. But they also are taking the risk in Nolan because they don't want to do what Warner Brothers is. They don't want to piss him off. They want to keep him there for a while. So it's like, okay, he's worth investing in. So they invest him in it. I think it's going to make close to $1 billion, if not $1 billion. And I think they're going to make their money.
By the way, we see a great picture here of Christopher Nolan and crew doing their best Team Norway thing there. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? The Odyssey has shattered their initial box office projections. Again, other than comic book films, it's now the highest grossing R-rated film in history. It's doing pretty good. It's got a long way to go to break even, 100% for sure, but it's already off to a much better start than they anticipated it would. By the way, making about 40 million more in its opening weekend than Oppenheimer did. Anyway, whatever you guys make of all this, jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts.